So we can go from networking to basic research and then further up to applied research as well as commercialization. Also, something I forgot to mention, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to pop them in the chat and someone will answer them while we're going through the info session. Otherwise, if not, I'll answer them towards the end of the presentation also. We'll have a bit of a Q&A session at the end. So this is a snapshot of all the current schemes that we offer, which is also going to be updated soon. And today we're going to be focusing on the Technology Extension Support Program. So what is a Technology Extension Support Program? As you know, the Fusion portfolio is quite dedicated to collaborative research, and we've identified that collaborative research is quite fundamental for development in the Maltese RNI community. So we tried to adapt our Technology Extension Support Program from last year to this year's, and this program is here to try and implement and support private higher education institute partnerships. So the aims of the program can be split into 5. So primarily to actually foster the private entity and higher education institute partnership in a low risk environment. Secondly, to expose the private companies to research and innovation related activities and therefore bridge the gap towards more intensive initiatives. Thirdly, to involve more the higher education institutes in the industry, which therefore leads to novel ideas that could be developed. Fourthly, to increase the economic output by supporting industrial activities, and finally, to bridge the gap between academia and industry. So, as I've mentioned, the TESP aims to accelerate the application of technological innovation into the industry through collaboration of private entities with higher education institutes, hence ensuring incremental product or process development. The support scheme offers the opportunity for private entities to solve specific challenges in their company's products or processes with the assistance of external experts from academia while still safeguarding their IP. So the collaboration of these two sectors through TESP will help expose higher education institutes to challenges experienced in the sector and inspire researchers towards creating sector-wide innovations. So if we can go into a bit more specifics about the program, here was a bit of a snapshot of the eligibility. The typical eligibility applies, so the eligible entities must be registered in Malta. These can be the partnerships or limited liability companies, cooperatives, professional bodies, NGOs, or non-profit making entities. Any applicant within this eligibility criteria must be established and/or incorporated by the date of application submission. And the applicants should have already discussed the requirements with the Maltese Higher Education Institute and agreed on a way forward prior to the application submission. So much so that a service agreement has to be submitted as part of your application process. So if we can move on to the financing, then this project is at 90% financing of eligible costs. So we will be financing 90% of it, and the private entities have to add in an additional 10%. As usual, these eligible costs cannot be provided in kind. And the funding program is only eligible under the de minimis route. The funding will be split into tranches, since this year the projects have to be over a duration of 24 months, which I will get into in the next slide. But basically what this means is that the finances will be split, the pre-financing of 50% of the grant amount at the beginning of the project, interim 30%, and then 20% will be kept as a retention and be distributed at the end of the project. So the application form and supporting documents are already available on the website. The deadline for application is at 11:59 on the 27th of January. Please make sure that all requested documents are sent before the deadline. Any applications that are received after the deadline will be deemed administratively non-compliant. And the selection and funding of proposals under this program shall be on a competitive basis. So a bit more detail about the project parameters. All projects that are applying must have a start date by the 1st of May 2025. Projects, as I've mentioned, have to have a duration of 24 months, 2 years, hence why the funds are split into tranches. The maximum possible grant for a project is 100,000, including indirect costs. And all eligible costs are supported by 20% indirect costs. And the budget for this year's call is at around 600,000 euros. So the application form itself. The application form has been simplified, and given the aims of TESP, one has to highlight these two important points: how the importance of the Higher Education Institute for the goals of the project, and how the solution is intended to be implemented with respect to the problem underlined. So as I mentioned, the application form has been simplified. It focuses on the incremental improvement that is aimed to be achieved by the project, and is split into two sections, having 4 questions, which specify the challenges identified and the proposed solution by the project, including how the Higher Education Institute, as mentioned at the top, will actually help achieve these goals. So the implementation section describes the tasks to be carried out to achieve the described goals and objectives of the project. These tasks are to be distinguished between the private entity and the Higher Education Institute as specified within the service agreement that, as I mentioned, is part of your application. The format and percentage weighting of each deliverable must be included. So what does this mean? The percentage weighting of each deliverable is dependent on the importance of the overall project, and the total percentage must not exceed 100%. There are two mandatory deliverables which are not included in the percentage weighting that you can apply. So the percentage weighting applies to all the other deliverables which you are applying for. And the format refers to the format of your deliverable, whether it's a photo, whether it's a presentation, a PDF document, so on and so forth. So eligible costs. Eligible costs must be used for the purpose of achieving the objectives of the project during the lifetime of the project. And all eligible expenses must be incurred between the start date and the end date of the project and must be limited to the budgeted value. So what eligible costs are included? There's research personnel, which can be new or existing, management costs, which are capped at maximum 15% of the project value, specialized equipment, which are capped at a maximum of 20%, consumables, which obviously have to be used directly on the project, and they're also capped at a maximum of 20%. The Higher Education Institute activities, this can be between 40 to 50% of your project value. And the subcontracted activities, which also include the Higher Education Institute activities, which are therefore also capped at a maximum of 50%. So there are some mandatory deliverables as part of this application and part of the project. And therefore, them being mandatory, they have to be submitted during the lifetime of the project, and templates will be distributed upon signing of the grant agreement and the actual starting of the project. These include the progress meetings, which happen at the 6-month interim, which will include delivering a presentation. Again, the template will be given to you. So we'd have four meetings within the duration of your project, at least 1 article in social media for public awareness, an interim and an end of project technical report, so one at the 12-month and one at the end of the project. And the same goes for an audited financial report. The interim financial report doesn't need to be audited, it's just a recap of the finances till the midway of the project. And then the last financial report is the audited one. Again, all of these documents the templates of them will be handed out at the beginning of the project. So any additional deliverables are capped at an additional maximum of 8 deliverables. Usually these type of additional deliverables actually enhance the strength of your application. They are not compulsory, but if you list them as a committed deliverable at application stage, they have to be adhered to the end of the project. So these are a few examples of additional deliverables which can be included. So for example, you could include a strategic plan to assess the project after its conclusion and possible further applications. So obviously this would be done towards the end of the project, not after the project. A report on the solution generated and possible future applications, maybe further collaboration between the beneficiary and the Higher Education Institute, verification and validation reports if the project you're applying for includes some sort of verification or validation of the process or the product which is being applied for. A report on dissemination activities if you'd like, or maybe an open access peer-reviewed journal. In the case of the Technology Extension Support Program, the open access peer-reviewed journal is not heavily weighted as is in maybe some of our other programs, because we do understand that it might not be the major goal of such a program. So again, these are additional deliverables. You can feel free to add any other type of deliverable that maybe you think is more reflective of your project. It can be technical deliverables if you wish. They don't have to be so broad like these. If you have any questions regarding these, please feel free to put them in the chat. And if one of my colleagues won't address them as I'm ongoing, I can address them at the end of the presentation. So the evaluation process is external, as you may know. All our programs are evaluated by external evaluators. The evaluation is split. So there are 3 independent technical evaluators. As I said, these are external. And evaluation criteria is split into 2. So 50% and 50%. 50% of it is according to the effectiveness of the private higher education institute partnership. So are the challenges clearly identified as part of your application? Do the parties have the necessary skills to successfully deliver the project and its objectives? Does the project result in an impactful improvement? And is the proposal practically feasible? So on and so forth. And the second part of the evaluation, the other 50%, goes towards the coherence and the effectiveness of the proposal's implementation. So this refers to the work packages and the deliverables which you would have applied for. So are the proposed tasks appropriate to the time frame they were given? Is the proposal coherent and effective? Does the budget reflect the project objectives and tasks? Have the risks been identified and mitigated? As obviously we all know that research has its risks, but as long as these risks are identified from beforehand, that maybe they could pose a problem once the project starts, obviously we understand and we can create mitigation as part of your application to if these risks do arise. So we have a matchmaking tool. It's called Plumtree. Feel free to register and then go into our matchmaking tool. You can sign up for the test, and that way you'll be, once you log into the Plumtree, you can see all other people who are interested in applying for test, and that way it will help you actually form the collaboration that you need. So feel free, even university, to apply to Plumtree and register for the specific call. The private institutes, the private entities, please do. It does help actually find matchmaking and actually maybe find the collaboration that you need for this project. If you scan the QR code, it should be able to send you directly to our portal. And finally, if you could please just scan this last QR code to fill in the survey about this information session, this would be very helpful to us. Feel free to reach out and organize one-to-one meetings for project-specific advice. We also offer administrative assistance to applications. So if you would like us to help you review the application prior to actually submitting it, administratively always, we cannot provide technical advice. We do suggest that you come to us. The least thing we want is that your applications are administratively non-compliant and don't even get to go to evaluation stage. So feel free to contact me or any of my colleagues, and we'll try and help you as much as we can to make sure that there's no administrative non-compliance. And just to remind you that the application deadline is on the 27th of January at 11:59 p.m. So I'm just going to stop sharing to see maybe whether there are any questions in the chat. I can't see any questions. Would anyone like to ask anything maybe? Okay, we have a question in the chat. So, is it possible to apply for this program in conjunction with others during the same period? So you can always apply to all of our funding schemes at any given time. It's always important to keep in mind the concept of double funding. So what double funding means is basically getting money from 2 sources or more ample sources for the same project, the same resource, the same anything. So feel free to apply for TESP and, for example, TDP. They're both open at the same time, but for 2 different projects. There's absolutely no limitation to how many times you apply. You can also apply multiple times to TESP for different projects. You can apply multiple times to other programs that we have for multiple projects, as long as the project goals are clearly identified. And if you're going to apply multiple times, you specify the differences between your projects, then there's absolutely no limitation to applying for multiple at the same time. If you want to increase your chances of getting a funding scheme, and you think, for example, the same project applies to programs, you can also apply for the same project to two programs. Just if you end up winning both of them, you would have to forfeit one of them due to this double funding. I'm not sure whether that answers your question, Kevin. Yes, okay. Any other questions then? I think not. Okay. Obviously, feel free to reach out for one-to-one sessions. Maybe you'd like to actually come up to us with your ideas and see whether it fits the scope of the program. We're very, very ready, available to make one-to-one meetings and actually assist you, obviously, with the administrative task of applying to our funding schemes. And we look forward to hearing from most of you. Thank you for your attention.